ready?
Ready.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. This is going to be a little different. For those of you watching at home, we've got 4 of our council members that are joining us remotely, and the rest of us are here in the room. And just be patient with us. We'll probably move a little slower tonight to make sure we hear everything and make sure we're clear on everything. But appreciate everybody's flexibility tonight. I'd like to start things off by welcoming everyone here, and I will stand, and y'all can join me in the pledge. And then I've asked Jeff Crawford, Associate Pastor at Cross Church, to come and bring the invocation tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father, we come before you at an extraordinary time in our world's history, our city's history, our nation's history, the plague of our generation. And we appeal to you. There's a lot of people that are scared and anxious, and we would ask that your hand of peace would overcome the fear that people experience in their lives on a day-to-day basis right now. This is not untouched any sector of our lives, Father, and so we know that from the super corporations in our city like Tyson, we would ask that you be with them. We pray for the small business owner whose life savings is bound up in their business, that you would provide for them in this time. And particularly all the way down to the hourly wage employee whose salaries and wages have been cut. Some people are without jobs right now. May we truly, as a community, pull together to help one another out, whatever it takes during this season. I want to pray for first responders, for our police department, for our healthcare workers, people who are on the front lines taking care of us while we try to take care of each other. And in this particular moment tonight, God, I pray for our city officials, those who are gathered in this room. Would you grant them a special measure of wisdom as they talk about the business of our city, as they make decisions for the best of who we are as citizens. Thank you for the city of Springdale. Thank you for our life. We pray that it can be restored to health soon. And may, during this time, we truly be one nation that is under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. All right. Again, I will welcome you to this regular meeting of the Springdale City Council. This is Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. I will remind everyone, I probably need to remind Denise especially, that as we take votes, don't be too quick. Let's wait for the delay and make sure we get everybody recorded. So with that said, Denise, let's call the roll.
Mayor Sprouse,
Here.
Amelia Williams,
here,
Jeff Watson,
Here.
Mike Overton,
Here.
Mike Lawson,
Here.
Rick Evans,
Here.
Brian Powell,
Here.
Kathy J. Cox,
here.
Ernest Kate.
Here.
All right, thank you. And again, thanks everyone for their flexibility and their work to get here, and for those who've made that possible in our IT department. We've got large print agendas available over here if our audience member would like one. This is the portion of each meeting that we set aside for comments from our citizens. Guys, is there anybody back there that has indicated they'd like to address the council concerning an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then to the approval of minutes. Council, you've had an opportunity to look over the minutes. If there are no changes or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. What's your pleasure on procedural motions, council?
Move for A and B.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for A and B. There is one change, forgot to mention. On where it says 9, A through F, and then 13, That 13 should be an 11. Does the motion and second still
Include that.
stand?
You already had that written down.
Okay, the motion and second have been amended to reflect that. Roll call, please.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Carry 7-0.
Okay, this is working. I do need to remind all the council members that are here in the room, and Patsy and Wyman, if y'all present, be sure and speak really well into that microphone, because that's what the rest of them are depending on to hear. Item 7 is a resolution to appoint a city council member to the A&P Commission, and this was forwarded from the Committee of a Whole with recommendation for approval.
Move the resolution be adopted.
Okay, I think I did read it.
Did you read the title?
I read what's on the paper here. We've got a motion and a second.
Yes.
This is, for those watching at home, this is to approve, the council appoints 2 members to serve on the A&P Commission. Mike Lawson is one of those members. Colby Fulfer, a former councilman who resigned, was the other member. So we are, the council, with this vote, the council would be appointing Mike Overton to serve on the A&P Commission. And we do have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Carry 7-0.
Okay. All right, item 8, and I'm going to go ahead and read this, and before we start discussion. A resolution by the City of Springdale supporting the House Joint Resolution 1018 of 2019, proposing an amendment to the Arkansas Constitution to continue a levy of 0.5% sales and use tax for highways and bridges, county roads, bridges, and other surface transportation, and city streets, bridges, and other surface transportation after the retirement of the bonds authorized in the Arkansas Constitution, Amendment 91, as special revenue to be distributed under Arkansas Highway Revenue Distribution Law. This was tabled for March 10th. It was defeated, actually, in committee, and I've brought it back and would ask the council to reconsider this resolution. I think it's very important for our city. I think it's very important for our state, and many in our city depend not only on the roads in Springdale, but also roads all over the state. Many employers, many residents, but directly to the city, this means $1.6 million per year in state turnback revenue that we can use for approved projects in our city. Our Highway Commissioner, Philip Taldo, is here. Philip, would you like to go ahead and speak and make your comments?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to come up and talk to you this evening on this important issue to our state and to our city. The mayor read the resolution, and it is pretty self-explanatory. I will just like to say, would like to say that the total revenue that will be generated for Arkansas roads as a result of this issue is estimated to be $290 million annually. Of this, $205 million will go to the Arkansas Department of Transportation, and the remaining $85 million will be split between Arkansas cities and counties. Why do we ask people to support this issue? It will continue to provide needed funding of roads in all 4 corners of the state. Issue 1 will make our roads safer, support jobs, and provide economic activity in our state without raising taxes. To
Philip, this is Kathy.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I just had one question. The 85 million to be distributed among the cities, what is the criteria that will be used for that distribution?
You just have to have, it's the normal criteria. I'm sure Wyman has it spelled out, but on this, I believe it's mainly the population.
Right, the distribution
All right,
is,
thank
is,
you.
is per capita. That's correct.
Yes, per capita. So they take the
Okay, thank
total amount and they divide it by the number of people in the state and multiply it by the number of people, citizens in that county. And that's how it comes about.
And let me say that the 160 could even, I mean, depending on what kind of census count we get, it could be more than that.
It could.
Yeah. So-
And while we're talking about that and the split, you know, we will, I think we really ought to look at it by not how much we're going to get, but how much are we going to lose in 2023 if we don't extend this sales tax. That's what the real number is. You've got that money in your budget right now. That money will disappear in June of 2023 if this is not extended. So it's not, oh boy, it's Christmas, we get an extra 1.6. It's, oh no, we're going to lose that. And I want to say too that it's not just Springdale. The county as a whole and the cities together, it's $5.675 million for Washington County. Part of that goes to the county and the rest of it goes to the cities. In Benton County, it's $5.844 million. That's a total of $11.5 million a year to Washington and Benton counties. Now, I don't know about you all, but I just don't drive around just in Springdale. It's important that we have good streets here in Springdale, but every one of us drive to Fayetteville, drive to Bentonville, we drive to Tawnytown, we drive to Elkins. This is going to improve driving for us everywhere we go, not just in our cities. And I think that's an important point to raise. The revenue trends since 1980 has been flat for the highway funding. It's the reason that it's been flat is that cars now are getting better mileage, and the tax, most of the tax to the highways is from gas tax. And so although we're driving more miles and there's more people, we're using about the same amount of gas. Where the general revenue that supports everything else, DHS, the education system, higher education, every other thing that the state does has quadrupled. It's 6 times. It's increased 6 times since 1980. So you can see, if you could see this trend that I've got here, this top one is the general revenue of the state, and this bottom one is revenue for the highway department. Where's the camera?
They'll get you right there, I think.
If
Yeah.
you can see that. And not only is the revenue flat, the money doesn't go as far. In 1995, 200 miles of highway could be overlaid with $10 million. Now, today, using the same $10 million, we can overlay 54 miles.
Yep.
It's tough to make that stretch.
Okay.
I need to talk faster, don't I?
No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
fine.
The typical cost per mile on a 4-lane interstate is $10.4 million. This is amazing to me, but that's what it is. A 2-lane road, $3.4 million per mile for a 2-lane road, state highway. How did this initiative come about? They've been grappling with this at the state legislature for a long time. About 5 years ago, the governor appointed a highway funding working group of different people around the state and from the legislature, and asked them to study the problem and come out with a recommendation to him. I was on that funding working group and back then, and we came up with a need. That was before I was a highway commissioner. We came up with a need of about $400 million a year. The state legislature said, wow, that's a lot of money. We want to look closer at this. They initiated their own legislative audit at that time, and the audit came back at $478 million. So it actually came out more than what the working group had said. So the governor last year formulated a funding plan. This funding plan has taken the form of two different funding mechanisms. Number one was Act 416, which the legislature passed, and we started drawing last October, and it raises $95 million a year for our highways. That money is coming from a 3-cent gas tax and a 6-cent diesel tax. It's coming from starting to charge a higher registration fee for electric cars. That was a small part of it, but it's going to become bigger as we go forward. And another $35 million, it comes from gambling revenues to the state. And that was a minimum $35 million. And then so that was one mechanism. The second mechanism, and the legislature passed it, was issue 1 to raise $205 million. And that's what we're talking about tonight. The other one is old news. This is new news. This $205 million, and people have asked, why are we having a constitutional amendment on this? I feel kind of funny about that. Well, I'll tell you the reason is the legislature, if it was just a bond issue, they can pass that themselves, and they cannot refer that to the people. And they said, no, we're not going to approve that. We want the people to approve it. The only way that can be done is through a constitutional amendment. That's the reason it's a constitutional amendment. Now, this passing a tax in a constitutional amendment is not altogether a foreign thing. Article 14 in our amendment dedicates taxes to our schools in the Constitution. Amendment 75 levied 8% sales tax on a conservation tax that goes to game and fish, parks, and heritage. Amendment 91 is a constitutional amendment, and that's the one that's going to expire coming up in 2023, the half cent. And the fourth one that I was able to find is graduated taxation on the net casino gaming receipts. So there's at least 4 different articles and amendments here that mandate a tax in our Constitution. Okay. Let me get the annual revenue expected to be available in 2024 from Act 416 is 95 million, which I already said. This issue 1 is 205 million. Our current construction program, excuse me, is 440 million. That gives us a total of $740 million to spend on our state highways. Now, whenever I say spend on our state highways, that doesn't mean that we're going to go build highways across the prairie, across the rice fields in South Arkansas. You know, this is going to enable us to do more things like the Bella Vista bypass, like the Springdale bypass, by, excuse me, widening 112 from Bentonville to Fayetteville, the airport connector road. We've got other examples the money's been used for so far in 265, widening from Fayetteville up to Bentonville, Rogers, to Rogers. So this money is going to be used for pavement preservation, $3 billion of it over a 10-year period, bridge improvements, $1.1 billion, interstate maintenance, $1 billion, safety programs, $500 million, and capital and congestion relief, $1.8 million. Now, unless you're a lot better at math than I am, you say, well, what's the percentages there? 25% of this is going to go to capital improvements. In other words, new capital improvements and congestion relief. That's where we're talking about the big deals, the big jobs. 75% of this is going to go to overlay our state highways, 16,000 miles of state highways that we have here in Arkansas. You know, I'd just like to say in wrapping up here that I think it's a good thing for our state, and I don't think anybody here, whether you think you're going to vote for it in November or not, I don't think there's anybody here or listening here that can say they don't think this is good for Springdale. And that's what we want you to put out, that you think this is a good thing for Springdale. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. All right. Is there other comment or questions? Or would someone, or I would also entertain a motion?
This is Kathy. My first comment is I appreciate all of the information that people have shared with me this past week since our vote. It's been very helpful. And this is an endorsement. This is not, the people will still decide at the end of the day.
That's correct.
With that being said, I make a motion to approve this resolution.
Okay.
Second.
Was that a second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, a properly called motion and a second. Other discussion or comments? All right, roll call.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Hal,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Carries 6-1.
All right, thank you all very much, and Philip, thank you for being here. Item 9, Planning Commission report and recommendation by Patsy Christie, Director of Planning and Community Development. She's off on her little island over there. We are practicing social distancing, so Patsy, go ahead.
The first item is a rezoning request for property located at 6308 Harbor Avenue. And we're not putting the pictures on the wall tonight, but you all should have those in your iPad, in the packet that was sent out. This is a .94 acre tract. The request is to rezone the property from A1 District to a Neighborhood Office District 01. Planning Commission recommends approval of the rezoning request, and the title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the City of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from Agricultural District A1 to Neighborhood Office District 01 and declaring an emergency.
Move the order to pass.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion, and I think we got a second. We're going to give you all plenty of time to look it over and find it, and I know you're dealing with an iPad to join us, and then a hard copy to look at, so we'll give you plenty of time. But if there are any questions, you can sure bring them forward.
So this
So is
is,
this unanimous at the planning commission?
I believe so, yes.
Was there any opposition?
I don't think so. The property has an existing home on it and a commercial building, and the property owner was made aware that once they rezone it, that house becomes a non-conforming use. As long as it stays in use and it's not closed for more than 6 months, it can stay that way, and I don't think there was any questions with that.
Did you say there was already commercial business?
There's a
there?
commercial business building that was there, and was there when we annexed it into the city too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, wrong one. Sorry. This is the one that's a single-family home that's next to, we have two on Harbor. This is the
This is
one
next
that's
to the
next door to the
Golf course.
golf course, and they're going to use it for an office only, but they could still use it for a residential structure. Both of those are allowed in an O1 zone. Too many in a row. The ones on the commission, on the council agenda are in the wrong order of what we had them on at Planning Commission. My brain works one way usually.
so is this an office for the golf course?
No, this is a person
always
buying it to put in a different type of office. They will have to pay some additional parking spaces to meet the minimum amount to convert it to a commercial use or an office use. And I think they intend to pave a little bit larger area because they have more cars parked there than the minimum. It could be converted
Now
back
that you've
to a,
Now
I'm
that
sorry?
you've refreshed your memory, I'll ask the same questions again. Do you know if there was opposition at the
No,
planning commission?
there wasn't any opposition to either one of the ones on Harbor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, we'll call the roll.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Carry 7-0. It does have.
The emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the emergency clause. Denise?
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am. Emergency clause carries 7-0.
And as always, the emergency clauses are included because there are pending actions taken on these pieces of properties. The next one is a request to rezone property on 5014 Harbor Avenue. This is a 3-acre tract. It is being requested to be rezoned from A1 to C2, which is the single-family house and the commercial building that was there when it was annexed in. And as I said, the property owner was made aware of the potential changes. Planning Commission recommends approval. The title of the Ordinance reads an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the City of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from Agricultural District A1 to General Commercial District C2 and declaring an emergency.
Move the order be passed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Are there any other questions or comments before we vote?
Again, I'll ask some. It's okay. This is towards the east end of Harbor, correct?
It's in the portion between Oak Grove Road and 48th Street. It's not,
Right.
yeah, and there
And
is,
what does the land use plan call for that area?
the land use plan calls for commercial use in that entire area. The property to the west of it has already been zoned to commercial. There's some other commercial in that area. The property right to the east of it is still A1, but
But most of it's commercial,
most of it's going that direction, yes.
and that's what the land use plan calls for?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Jay Cox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes. Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Voting for the emergency clause. Did we get a
Move the
second?
emergency- I was just going to make that motion, Mayor.
Okay, we've got the motion. Will you second it? Okay.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jay Cox,
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 7-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda has a correction. The property is currently zoned I-2, and that's the way it was presented to Planning Commission. So the request is to rezone property from I-2, which is Industrial District, to Institutional District P1. It is a .96 acre tract. The Planning Commission recommends approval of this request. The title of the ordinance reads an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the City of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from General Industrial District I-2 to Institutional District P1 and declaring an emergency. The property contains an office building that has been used as an office for quite some time. We have been looking at, one of the concerns was whether or not it have enough parking spaces. I think we've identified 47 existing parking spaces on the property. There is some additional area that could be paved if additional parking is needed. The parking requirement is, once it is determined what the area of their sanctuary is going to be, and the fire marshal determines what is the maximum occupancy, then the number of parking spaces is based on one space for every 4 occupants. They're working through those calculations, but I feel comfortable that there will be enough space. And they may have to go back to pave some more. We don't have all those answers yet, but we're in the process of working that. They wouldn't get a certificate of occupancy for it until that work is done.
Move the
What,
ordinance.
can you explain to me what institutional district, like, what does that allow for?
It's for churches, schools, those kind of, it's a very limited zone, and those are the kinds of things that it goes into. And this is a church that's going into this location.
Now, that's the,
Gotcha.
yeah, that's the P1.
P1,
Yes.
Most of the churches in the area have been rezoned to that. Most of the school property has been rezoned to P1.
Move the order be passed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jay Cox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the emergency clause.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 7-0.
The next item also has a correction in the body of the ordinance in that it should be Revival Tabernacle Church, not Rival Tabernacle Church. This is property that exists at 2608 East M Avenue. The church has been there a long time. The property is currently zoned A1 and I1, and they are requesting to rezone it to an institutional district P1. The title of the ordinance reads an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from agricultural district A1 and light industrial district I1 to institutional district P1 and declaring an emergency.
Move the ordinance pass. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Any questions, comments? Okay, Denise?
This church has been here a long time, and they've been great neighbors for the folks in this area.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes. Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
both the ordinance emergency clause carry 7-0.
The next item is a request to rezone property located at 3018 East Robinson Avenue. It's a 19-acre tract. They are requesting to rezone 14.94 acres to MF12 and 4.06 acres to C5. That C5 property actually fronts onto East Robinson. The other property would back up to the residential that's been developed in that area on the north and the west sides. The MF12 zone is the zone that restricts the height of any multifamily to 12 feet, to 2 stories or 35 feet, similar to what we did with some of the others that we had in it come in as a higher density multifamily. The Planning Commission has reviewed this request and recommends approval. The title of the ordinance reads an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto, by rezoning certain lands from agricultural district A1 to thoroughfare commercial district C5 and medium density multifamily residential district MF12 and declaring an emergency.
And there was no issues with the residents surrounding that plot of land?
No, there were no adjacent property owners who had any comments.
Patsy, on the multifamily, how many units can be placed
Well,
in
at
that?
the maximum they can do, if they are allowed or can use all the incentives that are available to them, would be 12 units per acre for 15 acres, because it's 14.94. They have to start out at 8 units per acre, and in order to increase it to that 12 units per acre, they have to use the incentives that are available in the multifamily, which includes additional open space, materials that they use to develop with, and amenities they add to the project. And we don't review that until we get a large-scale development plan that comes in at that time. But the maximum can never be over 12 units per acre.
Okay.
So you're saying there
So-
was no opposition to this?
Right.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No opposition.
So I assume that all these people on the west side and all the people on the north side were notified of this rezoning?
They were by certified mail, return receipt requested.
And then will there be requirements about access?
Well, they'll have to submit a preliminary plat to show how that's going to be laid out, and we haven't seen any of that yet. And they will be required to have 2 access points or to meet whatever the fire code requirements are for access points when and if the development plan that's proposed, or it could be subdivided, it could be one entire project as a multifamily large-scale development plan.
What is that tract just to the east of that? What is its zone?
I think it's zoned MF4. I don't have my map with me. I'll have to look at what it shows on.
Is that Rocky Steels?
It's one that we had a project approved last year or maybe year before last for that piece of property to have a 55 and older section of it, and the rest of it would be just general apartments, and that was approved, and it has not moved forward. They're probably coming up on their limitations of where they could go ahead and do with that without asking for an extension. It was that Tapestry and something project that came through. I think,
I remember
Ryan,
that
you were
one.
on there, yeah. But they haven't moved forward with it yet.
I just didn't remember if that was a 55 or older deal or not.
Portion of it was, but when you zone it to MF12, it's not designated for 55 and older. That's something they have to submit.
Yeah, with apartments, it's gonna be tough getting in and out of that place.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's going to be
they're
hard
really
getting
busy
in
on
and out.
412.
Yeah. I know the property that it's adjacent
Could you-
to it, we're looking at trying to
I
get
couldn't
an
hear what Rick
access to
said.
265.
Rick, can you repeat?
Oh,
Lean
I
up
said
into
it's-
that.
I said it's gonna be tough getting in and out of that property as busy as 412 is during certain time of the day, especially because it's tough getting out on Dick Smith and the rest of them.
Yeah.
It might be better to try to look at how they line those up the streets across the street, across from them, and, even look at some kind of a light, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
gonna be tough when you put a bunch of stuff in there apartments in there to get in and out of there.
Right. As I said, the property that's adjacent to it, that the project we had approved, they were looking at the possibility of getting an access point out to
Butterfield Coach.
Butterfield Coach. They didn't have that worked out. I don't know if that was one of the factors. If they can't, get a second access point, it limits the number of units that they can put at that location too.
We don't have the fire marshal in here, but I'm not sure they would, well, they might have spacing. I don't know what spacing they'd have to have two access points on 412.
It's my understanding that you take the diagonal of the property and it has to be half that diagonal distance is the distance between the two drives. Now, that's been pointed out to everybody when they come talk
And
to us
that's-
about
and-
it.
And that's the kind of stuff they'll have to work through at large scale.
Right.
They're asking for a rezoning right now, so.
The maximum number of units they can put is 12. That doesn't mean that 12 units per acre will fit on that piece of property when you have to meet all of those other conditions. We had one on Randall Welby where they bought a house in the adjacent subdivision, did access into that to get a second access point. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen on this one, but those are the kinds of actions that they're going to have to look at to make the project work.
Was there any discussion during planning commission about reducing that from an MF12 to an MF4?
That was not something that the property owner was agreeable to do. I think the MF12 allowed it to be adjacent to those properties and not be 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 story buildings that would look over into those backyards because you can't be any taller than 2 stories. So that's usually the discussion we have.
Kathy, what's the setback between those homes and these proposed multi-family units?
Well, they have a 20-foot backyard, setback, and then the buildings would have to be at least 20 feet, and usually there's a utility easement in that. I can't tell you until we look at a layout as to how much, but at least would be at least 20 feet, so that's 40 feet from the back of those existing houses.
So,
Okay, I was just thinking about a 2-story building behind a single-family home. That's why I asked the question.
Well, you have 2-story houses sometimes that are
Yeah.
adjacent to single-family. That's why we go with MF12, so that the buildings that they are putting in there would not be any taller than a 2-story home. That's how we keep that from becoming an issue.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
so to follow up on Kathy's question and Brian's question, was there any thought of, you remember what they did over on the 10 acres on Butterfield Coach that, on Highway 265, that we rezoned a month or two ago?
Well, this MF12 accomplishes what we asked them to do with the buffer.
Right.
Because they were asking for MF16, and we created that buffer on the north and the west sides of that property so that nothing could be any taller than 2 stories adjacent to those single-family homes. They've come in with
That's what
that
we-
for the entire one.
That's what we did on the property over on 265?
Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly what we did on that
Yeah,
one.
this is how they ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they're coming in to ask for the entire piece of property to be nothing taller than 2 stories.
MF12,
Right.
okay.
I don't think we have a motion.
I'll make a motion the ordinance pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more questions or comments before we vote?
I hate to keep asking questions, but is that a possibility that they might try to come in and ask to come across one of those properties to the west?
Oh dear.
Well, they would have to work with the property owners and come in with an access easement or purchase an access easement before we'd even consider something like that. I mean, that's not something that the planning commission would require. They just have to tell us how they're going to meet that fire code requirement of 2 access points if they decide if they have that many units.
But we would still have
Well, all
there
I'm
would
saying
still be
is
a
I'm sure
mechanism.
nothing like
I'm
that
sorry,
would happen.
Jeff. I didn't mean to talk on top of you. There would, my question would be, but there would still be a mechanism that would have to be approved.
Right, they would have
Yeah.
to submit a preliminary plat. All the adjacent property owners get notified by that. We go through the review to see that it meets all the standards for street standards, all the lot sizes, all the drainage is taken care of, the access points to meet the fire code and all of that before they can move forward with starting any work on it. It's either a subdivision plat or a large-scale development, and both of those go through the same review process.
Everybody okay?
Yes.
All right, Denise?
Hal,
No?
Jay Cox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Carry 6-1.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Jay Cox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Hal,
Yes.
Carry 7-0.
The next request is to rezone 14.5 or 14.95, depending on whether you count the highway right-of-way in that, of property located at 3406 South Thompson. Part of the property is already zoned C2. The remainder of it is zoned MF12, and they're requesting that the entire piece of property be rezoned to C2 instead of having to come up with 2 separate legal descriptions, that we're just doing it all with, I'm sorry? Do I have the wrong one?
Says C5.
Oh, I'm sorry, C5, yes. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it
it's
says
going from
C5.
MF12 and C2 to
To
C5.
C5.
Is
And
that
that's
right?
a legal description for that entire piece of property because the line on the zoning map that created the separation between the two was an arbitrary line when the zoning map was done a long time ago, and we couldn't find any real legal description for it. So Planning Commission reviewed this and recommends that it be rezoned. The title of the ordinance reads an ordinance amending ordinance number 3307, the same being the zoning ordinance of the city of Springdale, Arkansas, and the plat pertaining thereto by rezoning certain lands from medium-density multifamily residential district MF12 and general commercial district C2 to thoroughfare commercial district C5 and declaring an emergency.
Move the order to pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All right, Denise?
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes. Move the emergency clause be added.
Second.
And a second, okay.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carries 7-0.
The next item is a conditional use request for a tandem lot split at 4897 Whittle Road. Planning Commission reviewed this tandem lot split and recommends approval. The title of the ordinance reads, resolution reads, a resolution approving a conditional use at 4897 Whittle Road as set forth in ordinance number 4030. And this would be no conditions other than the comments that need to be completed on the lot split.
Move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? All right, Denise?
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Carries 7-0.
The next item is a conditional use for a use unit 33, which is a self-supporting tower antenna structure or monopole for agricultural property located at 760 Butterfield Coach Road. Planning Commission reviewed this request for the location of this monopole, went over the standards that were outlined in Chapter 130, Article 6, Section 3.4. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the conditional use. The title of the resolution reads, a resolution approving a conditional use at 760 Butterfield Coach Road is set forth in ordinance number 4030 with the conditions that the monopole meet the standards outlined in Chapter 130, Article 6, Section 3.14. The only question we had raised at the Planning Commission was an adjacent property owner who was concerned about the facility itself creating cancer or health problems for the adjacent property owner, and that's not one of the conditions that we discuss in citing poles. I think Kathy Foraker sent an explanation if anybody has any questions about that.
Right, it was about the safety of the facility, and this is, of course, obviously, if it's coming to you from the Planning Commission, the fall zone, everything has been, it's well within the
Meets all
amount
that
needed for a
criteria.
fall zone.
Yeah,
so-
meets all that criteria,
Yeah.
yes.
Move the resolution pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Carries 7-0.
The next item is a request for a conditional use of a use unit 42, which is a church or synagogue in a C2 district at 3430 West Sunset Avenue. This is a commercial building that they have provided us with agreements or adjacent property owners being willing to provide the additional parking that's needed for this facility. The Planning Commission recommends approval of this conditional use with the conditions that modification to the building as outlined by the building department must be completed. We need signed parking agreements, must be provided, and they must meet the requirements of the sound ordinance. This fortunately is not a location that is surrounded by residential uses. It's commercial all the way around it. So the title of the resolution reads, a resolution approving a conditional use at 3430 West Sunset Avenue as set forth in ordinance number 4030 for a use unit 42 church synagogue with the conditions that I just outlined.
Move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Any further comment or questions?
Where was the parking coming from again?
Some of it will come from Western Sizzling that has a lot of property, I mean, a lot of parking on the north end of their property, and then there's a little bit around those other buildings that most of those are shown not to be in use on the Sundays and the times that they showed us that they would be using church services.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Denise?
Yes,
Evans,
ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Carries 7-0.
The next item is a request for conditional use at 1101 South Thompson Street. This is for a use unit 44, a mobile vending. This is the tin box location. They had one previously. This is a different mobile vending unit that will be placed at this location. Planning Commission recommends approval of the conditional use with the following conditions: may not operate between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. If a health certificate is required, display the health certificate in a manner visible to the customers. No obstruction of pedestrian or motor vehicle traffic flow, no obstruction of traffic signals or regulator signs, no vending upon a public way, no sound devices that produces a loud and raucous noise in violation of city ordinance or violate any other city ordinances in connection with the vending operation. Sites to remain clean and free of paper or refuse of any kind generated from the operation of the business, with all trash or debris accumulating within 20 feet of any vending stand to be collected and deposited into a trash container. Title of the resolution reads, a resolution approving a conditional use at 1101 South Thompson Street as set forth in ordinance number 4030.
Move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Carries 7-0.
The next item is a conditional use for a use unit 28, which is a home occupation for property located at 4303 Kinder Avenue, which is an SF2 district, requesting a home occupation for crafts and sewing at that location. Planning Commission recommends approval of the conditional use with the following conditions: no alteration of the outside appearance of the residential structure, provision of separate outside entrance for the business areas of the residential structure, no outside storage of materials required for the operation of the business, operated only by the resident members of the household, and shall not have any employees, concessionaires, or any other form of operator or helper, whether such business is conducted on the premises or off the premises. Requires the use of an area no greater than 30% of the total heated living space of the residential structure, generates no traffic, parking, and sewage or water use in excess of what is normal in the residential neighborhood, will not produce any fumes, odors, noise, or any other offensive effects that are not normal to residential activity, will not involve accessory buildings, and stock and trade will not exceed 10% of the floor area of the accessory use. Title of the resolution reads, a resolution approving a conditional use at 4303 Kinder Avenue as set forth in ordinance number 4030.
Move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further questions or comments?
Was there any opposition?
No.
Is it okay we ask what the intended purpose of the conditional use is?
It was for crafting and sewing.
Any other questions? Okay, Denise?
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell.
Yes.
Carries 7-0.
All right. Thank you, Patsy. Item 10, Street and Capital Improvements Committee by Chairman Rick Evans. Rick?
Yeah, we had a meeting last week, Streets IP. We got one resolution on the agenda tonight that was moved forward from the committee with records for approval. And it is a resolution authorizing the grant of an access easement to Victory Church, NWA Incorporated, across property owned by the city of Springdale, Arkansas, parcel number 815-308-67-002, Springdale, Arkansas, or Springdale, Washington County, Arkansas.
Move the resolution pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions?
I was thinking we talked about giving this property to the church. Was it just the access easement?
Now, we talked about letting them have the property in exchange for the easement that
That
we're
little triangle.
buying from them.
Yeah, I thought that's what we talked about at committee.
Well, we just talked to him about doing that part. This had nothing to do with this part of the easement.
Right.
He was just talking to him about giving them that part of that property for the easement we're buying on the west of it,
Yeah,
along 56th Street.
okay.
I
So
don't know
that,
if he
this
was-
is not doing that, right?
No, this
No.
just,
We don't have that worked
this is
out
just
yet?
giving them the easement across that where there's already a driveway.
Yeah, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Denise?
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Carries 7-0.
All right, thank you. Item 11, Ordinance Committee Chairman Mike Overton. Mike, did you take that, or this is from March 10th?
No, somebody else took it, but I'll be happy to read the ordinance.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead.
This is an ordinance amending Chapter 130, Article 12, Section 3.8C4 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale, Arkansas, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. And this was passed out of the Committee of the Whole for recommendation for approval.
Okay.
Move the ordinance passed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Any other comments or questions? All right, Denise?
Watson,
Yes.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Move the emergency clause be adopted.
Second.
Overton,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Evans,
Yes, ma'am.
Powell,
Yes.
Jaycox,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Both the ordinance emergency clause carry 7-0.
All right, thank you. Item 12, any comments from council?
I do. So, Mayor, I'm very concerned about the economy.
I'm saying, oh, okay, go ahead. I got you.
And I think we need to have some discussion. I don't know if tonight's the appropriate time or maybe during a committee meeting. But I'm worried about our very good possibility our sales tax is going to fall. Where our budget process, we really, I think, kind of counted on it continuing to increase. And one of the things that we had done in the past, and it might not even be effective now because it may be that all department heads are already thinking that this is not a good time to be hiring anybody. But I think that we should consider a hiring freeze, at least until we see what's going to happen with our budget. And I'm talking specifically replacement hiring. Not, in other words, if there's an empty position and I'm wanting to exclude the police and fire because obviously we have positions there that definitely need to be replaced or filled. But other places, you know, if we have open spots, and we may not have any, I don't know, but if we do, I think it might be appropriate at this time to kind of freeze that and not fill those positions until we kind of let all this shake out and see how the economy's going to do. Now, and we've done this in the past. We did this, oh gosh, years ago.
Right.
And there are certain situations where positions have to be filled, but basically what we did in those situations was require the department heads to come forward to make their case on the importance of why that position needed to be filled and it couldn't be waited on. But I think and we need to start looking at other ways, tighten our belt. So that's something, I don't know where, maybe at a committee meeting on the finance committee or something,
Okay,
that I think we should discuss.
let's discuss that then. We'll just make that a finance committee discussion.
Okay.
In, I guess, what, almost 2 weeks, right?
All right.
April 6th. And by then, maybe we'll have a little better picture on where things are
Better
going.
feel.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and or possibly some other ideas.
yeah. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Anybody else? I do have, I did want Wyman to come and explain. I know we sent you all a finance report that showed the first 2 months, and there were some questions about it. It's a little confusing, and I wanted Wyman to explain that. Just looking at the paper, it looks like maybe our tax revenue was down for the first 2 months. That's not the case. Of course, we've got our tax revenue. In fact, it was up 9% in January, and I think 8% something in February. And we got a report today, and it was up over 2% today for March. So but I wanted Wyman to explain why it shows that way on that report, and so y'all would, so everybody be clear on that. Wyman?
The two numbers for 2019 are in a period that we were doing 50% of the tax to the general fund. The two numbers in 2020 are in a period that we were doing 55% to the general fund. So more money was pulled out of those 2 months in 2020 than wasn't pulled out of those in 19 for the general fund, 5% more. There was also our debt schedule for the 2012 bonds increases each year by $100,000. So the debt payment gradually increases. Well, the trustee made a slight error during 2018 and actually withheld too much for a few months, and then they lowered the debt, how much they were pulling out for debt for the last part of the year, which covered these 2 months. So the adjustment for debt payment was larger from one year to the next than normal. So those two factors make these two numbers not really exactly comparable because they're not in the same situation.
Right. And those debt payments were on the bond issue that we've just refinanced, correct?
Right, and that's going to change again when we book the new bond issue.
When will that start? When do we start saving that $950,000 a year? When do those payments start?
Next month.
Next month? Okay, good. So those that monthly payment will go down next month?
Right.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Is that clear enough? It's probably easier when we're all in person, but I wanted y'all to know that in case you saw that and were concerned that why comparing with those first 2 months of last year is not comparing apples to apples. All right. Well, I don't have anything else except I just want to thank everybody again. We've got 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks before our next committee meeting, and then we've got a planning commission meeting 2 weeks from tonight. We're open to any input as far as the way you think this went. Seemed pretty good from our end, but we'll have to see what things are like in 2 weeks. You know, planning commission meetings tend to be a little larger sometimes anyway, so we're just going to have to work through what we think this situation is like. But I'm glad we've got an extra week in between to let things move forward, and let's see where we're at. So, if nobody has anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.